All right, good evening, everybody, joining the Village Board on November 12, 2024. To start this evening off, we are going to open a public hearing regarding County Line Solar, RPIL Solar 12 LLC annexation agreement. The petitioner for that has asked that we take a motion to continue this. We're just simply following some formalities since we did advertise said public hearing. They're working with some review in regards to Minooka Fire, trying to get some additional feedback on this property. So I'm asking for a motion to continue.
December 10th?
Yes, we believe it's going to be the December 10th.
So moved.
Motion, trustee Amos, seconded trustee Carroll. Roll call for the continuation, please.
Amos,
Yes.
Brockman,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Luciano,
Yes.
and Selfridge.
Yes. All right, at that point, we will close the public hearing and we will move into the regular scheduled village board meeting for November 12, 2024. And please join me for a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lana, roll call, please.
Rick Bull,
Here.
trustees Brockman,
Here.
Carroll,
Here.
Chapman, Luciano,
Here.
Selfridge,
Here.
and Amos.
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum for this evening. We can conduct village business. Moving forward, we'll move on to citizens. Are there any citizens wishing to address the village board this evening? Yes, sir. Take the microphone. Please state your name for the clerk.
Felipe Francini. I'm a resident of Shorewood. I became a part of Shorewood in 1976 when I cut my first yard in Shorewood. In 1978, I was employed by the Public Works Department. I fell in love with Shorewood. Almost 50 years later, here I am, living in an HOA. HOAs were created in the 40s and 60s for some ugly reasons down south. Living in Shorewood, I thought I'd be here to retire. I was forced to retire early due to strokes. In a few months, I'm going to turn 65. Instead of enjoying my home and my property, I have been faced with a barrage of obstacles, which is ADA accommodations. I'm a veteran. As I worked for Shorewood, I took a couple of years off to serve in the military. As I'm trying to make my property accessible, first, the HOA denied me to widen my sidewalk, but there's about 20 driveways that have been expanded. I did a lot of FOIAs, and I'm still waiting for some. None of these driveways had a permit. I did this kind of work for Shorewood for almost 50 years. I did all the concrete work for the old Public Works Department garage. I did all the sidewalk and driveway repairs. And now as I'm trying to get a permit to widen my driveway, I'm denied by the HOA. And then they blow the dog whistle to your building department and your street department. Hey, that guy's cutting the curb. I was told I could cut the curb while Mr. Noriel was on vacation. I'm not doing something that I'm not knowledgeable of doing. I'm not doing something to destroy your community. Actually, there's not much to destroy in my HOA. You have some serious issues, and I think HOAs need to be held accountable for what they're supposed to do. You guys run by municipal code, and I believe you follow the rules and the law. HOAs don't have to. They claim SICA, the SICA Act doesn't apply to them. You're supposed to hold elections to appoint a board. For the last 14 years, the HOA board for Edgewater had been self-appointing, claiming that we needed a 51% quorum. SICA Act requires 20%. A year ago, for the first time, after I suffered a severe stroke and several small ones, I walked all around my HOA to collect votes. I finally, for the first time, made sure that we collected enough votes. On September 27th, sitting in this room, The HOA board engaged in election fraud, claiming we did not have a quorum. We had 28%. I told them to look into the law or I was going to file suit. Soon after that, I became a victim of harassment, some of them very nasty. I had complaints to the Attorney General's office. I didn't want to take it, but things don't seem to correct. Now my next complaint is going to be to HUD to make sure that my ADA civil rights get respected. Okay, I'm not asking for anyone to be catering to me, doing me any special favors. I served in the military because I believe in something. I had the honor of putting your flag in the old village hall every Monday morning. It was an honor. Okay. I worked side by side by many respectful board members. My first weekend working in this village, I got the honor of working with the mayor, Dave Barry, very respectful man. He wore his work clothes. He didn't think he was better than anyone. I got the honor of working with all your leaders in City Hall down the street. I don't believe that anyone should be disrespected the way I am being disrespected. I don't think any of your residents need to be called the N-word by a neighbor that might not agree with them. I saw that in the 80s when your postal master in Plainfield, your first black woman to serve, the N-word was spray painted at the side of her home.
Can you try, just so you know, sir, you've already exceeded the 3 minutes.
Yes,
You can kind of wrap it up, please.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
also going to take the opportunity to make a request. Due to stroke, sometimes individuals have speech impediments. I just had my first therapy yesterday, and I'm going to ask you that you allow a couple of extra minutes to individuals in my position. I have been here at HOA board meetings where the board claims they don't have access to turn on the little switch on it for the microphones. Individuals suffering from speech or hearing problems have been disrespected and told, if you cannot hear, you need to step up to the podium or step up to the board. I think it's important that you respect those situations. I don't think, as you can see the big crowd, I don't think anyone in the crowd is going to mind if you allow me 1 extra minute to finish my talk. And I believe ADA laws need to be respected. I think all of you are going to be getting my position at a very near future, and some of you might be almost there. So please respect ADA and respect your veterans. Yesterday was Veterans Day. It was a year ago that I sat in this meeting for our second election where there was election fraud again. Exactly a year ago yesterday. And that's very disgusting. Thank you.
Any other citizens wishing to address the village board for this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to this evening's consent agenda. Item 1 will be approval of the regular meeting minutes of October 22nd, 2024. Item 2 is approval of accounts payable in the amount of $535,804.40. Item 3 is approval of a proposal in the amount of $10,750 with me to replace and install the aluminum street light poles at Route 52 and Brookshore Drive. Item 4 is approval of the payment in the amount of $137,969.01 to Hacienda Landscaping for the River's Edge Park Phase A project. Item 5 will be a payment in the amount of $328,098.64 to deconstruction for the 2024 Earl Geneva Road Reconstruction Water Main Replacement Project. Item 6 will be approval of the payment amount of $20,304.20 to Superior Road Striping High Star Traffic for the 2024 Pavement Marking Program. Item 7 will be approval of a deposit in the amount of $6,686.40 to Ultimate Rental Services for the holiday market. Item 8 to be approval of a payment in the amount of $11,810.77 for the reindeers for the Town Center's reindeers for Town Center Pond Fountain Aerators. Those are not tied to the holiday market. That is just a separate brand. It was just coincidence. And finally, item number 9 will be approval of the payment in the amount of $10,000 to the Village of Shanahan for the Regional Transportation Planning Project. Are there any items the board member needs any further questions or clarity on regarding this evening's consent agenda?
I have a question on number
Yes, sir.
3.
Yes,
How are we recouping that money? I assume somebody took a car, hit it, right?
Nora, are you gonna touch on the Route 52, the Brook Shore light pole there they're referring to?
I will have to follow up with administration. I don't have that information in regards to the accident. I would hope it would be insurance.
There's typically the tender to the insurance.
Yeah, Tony tracks all that through our insurance company, and our insurance company goes after the other insurance company. So we end up usually paying for these things up front and then recoup on the back end.
Okay. Any additional questions from anybody?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by trustee Luciano,
Second.
second by trustee Amos. Roll call for consent, please.
Carol,
Yes.
Luciano,
Yes.
Selfridge.
Yes.
Amos.
Yes.
And Brockman.
Yes.
All right, consent agenda has been approved. We'll move into this evening's reports and communication section. Lana, is there anything you had received prior to this evening's meeting?
No, sir.
I have nothing at this time, thank you. We will move into the order of business for tonight. Item number 1 will be a consideration for approval of an ordinance granting a conditional use for a towing business in conjunction with an existing automobile repair business in the B2 zoning district for TLC towing at Shorewood Lube and Auto. This item is up for a first read. Over to trustee Brockman.
Thank you, Mayor. The applicants came before our last planning and zoning meeting. We did hold a public hearing on this. Comes here with a 5-0 approval vote for this board. And I'm sure Natalie can give us a few facts and figures.
Sure. In the late 80s or early 90s, Shorewood Lube and Auto was incorporated, came to Shorewood. They were zoned commercial and ultimately became a non-conforming use in the B2 district. The business has continually been operated. In 1995, they were given a conditional use permit along with an expansion that they did. The current owners purchased the building in 2022, their sister and brother, and they plan to continue operating in Shorewood. The property is on Cottage Street. You can see on the map where it's located. Just across the street is Oakwood. So, essentially that's basically their entryway would be across from Oakwood and Cottage. They basically repair vehicles. They would like to operate sort of an accessory use out of the facility, which is a 24/7 towing service. Be the owner of the business who would be operating the towing. Basically, they would tow vehicles to their property. They would tow vehicles to other sites, but they would not be having any police impound or tow yard or bringing any vehicles that need body work to their property at all. When we talked to them about how this would work, they agreed that they would be able to park the tow truck inside, so it wouldn't be parked in front of the building or behind the building or anything like that. And the only vehicles that would be towed to the property were ones that they were specifically going to repair. At the present time, they're doing about 5 to 10 tows per week. They do about 1 tow after business hours per week. They estimate that backup beepers sound off for about 2 minutes a day. And basically there's a building and the fence that separates them. This is very much an accessory use to their business. For the most part, the vehicle will go home with the owner. It will mostly just be parked there during the day, and we have informed them that they cannot park in front of the building. There's no parking behind the building, so the vehicle would have to be inside. Do you have any questions for me?
Let me add, we had, during the public hearing, no one spoke from the public for or against the project. So
They're just expanding, it's just basically being used for themselves to bring cars into themselves?
Yes, but they could theoretically tow a vehicle to another repair shop.
Sure, it's for hire.
Right.
And so the conditional use is just to allow towing, but
Right.
really the truck won't be outside.
Right.
It won't be stored there, and there won't be, and I guess outside of these numbers, if it becomes more of a nuisance, like more than 2 minutes for beeping, does that come back because that's not part of the conditional use?
I don't know that the 2 inch specifically was more of an estimate, so if it were
Okay.
3 or 4, then I think, we probably wouldn't worry about if that were occasional, but if it became much more than that, yes, we would let them
Revisit
know
it.
and we would revisit it. They've also confirmed they'll only ever have one tow truck, so we did write that specifically in the conditional use.
Okay.
So there's no storage there at all?
If it's gonna be stored there, it's gonna be stored in one of the bays, so
And then
inside the building.
They're doing body work?
They're not doing body work at all.
They're doing mechanical work?
They're doing mechanical work only. We just wanted to make sure that they weren't towing a bunch of wrecked vehicles to the property, so we wrote that into the ordinance.
They're not gonna have any salvage parts around the building?
No. They seem to me so far to be very conscientious business owners, and they, right away say, oh, yes, we'll park inside. We have no issues with that.
Yeah, for what it's worth, at the planning and zoning meeting, they said that the truck most likely isn't on property. It's off-site most of the time.
Seems like it's an easy accessory to their existing business, so see no issues.
Any other concerns? If not, I'll make a motion to approve an ordinance granting a conditional use for a towing business in conjunction with an existing automobile repair business in a B2 zoning district for TLC towing at Shorewood Lube and Auto and waive the second read.
Second.
Motion trustee Brockman, seconded trustee Amos. Roll call on item 1, please.
Luciano.
Yes.
Selfridge.
Yes.
Amos.
Yes.
Brockman.
Yes.
And Carroll.
All right, item 1's been approved. Business item number 2, we're gonna ask us to pass that over. That petitioner has requested to come back in December. So we'll take no action on business item number 2. At that point, we'll move on to agenda item 3, which is consideration for approval of an ordinance amending Title 10 of the Shorewood Village Code regarding employment agencies, board game cafes and spaces, public hearing notices, and freight terminals. This item is also up for a first read. Back to trustee Brock.
Thank you, Mayor. We did hold a public hearing on this with again, a 5-0 vote. I don't remember anybody speaking for or against the project, but there's a lot of stuff here. So Natalie, if you could handle that for us, please.
Sure. This is a bit of a cleanup text amendment for some issues that we've noticed over the last couple of months. One, we had a property owner approach us who was interested in leasing his space, which is on Jefferson Street, near the Will County Brewing property. He's interested in leasing it to an employment agency. As we looked into it, employment agencies were only permitted in the B2 and B3 districts. We thought that most of our B1 districts would be appropriate for an employment agency as well, so we're suggesting to amend the code to allow it in B1, B2, and B3, and we've also added a definition because we think it's good practice. So we define an employment agency as a company contracted to recruit, hire, and or staff employees for other companies or to assist job seekers in obtaining employment. That's the proposal. The other thing I do want to point out is that if this is approved, they would still be required to follow all the other zoning ordinance regulations. For example, sometimes when people think of employment agencies, they think about somebody going and lining up for a job fair outside. That's not permitted in our zoning district. Everything would have to be completely indoors. So it would really be a business office type of use. The second one, we've noticed actually that board game cafes and places where you go and play cards and games are becoming much more popular. Critical Grind started out mostly as a cafe where people could come and play one of their vast selection of board games for free. In the end, they realized the board games were much more popular than the cafe, so they've sort of changed their business model so that they're renting table space, people are playing the games, and then they can buy food from the cafe. Paper or Plastic Sports and Games is hosting a number of different game events and card events throughout the year. And we've heard even Kay's Liquors is doing some card events. This is becoming much more popular. As we look at it, board game cafe is kind of a quiet use, and we think it would be appropriate in the commercial districts. So we've suggested that we define it and allow it. We were defining it as an establishment where patrons play cards and board games, often while being served food and drinks. Customers typically pay an entry fee or rent a table in order to access a large library of games and instruction from staff on how to play them. Customers may also take part in tournaments. Board game cafes and spaces are not casinos or gambling establishments. The third item is with regard to public hearing notices. Currently, for most of our planning and zoning cases, if there's a public hearing, we have to post a newspaper notice 15 to 30 days before the public hearing. That goes into the Joliet Herald News, and we think that's working well. We also have to send a written notice to property owners within 150 feet of the site 5 to 15 days before the public hearing. And our code requires that it either be sent certified or registered mail with return receipt, that's the old school green card, or by personal delivery. There are a couple of issues with the written notices. First, we think that 5 to 15 days isn't sufficient notice. Sometimes if people sent it out on the 5th day before the meeting, sometimes people don't get it. If residents aren't home, the letter goes back to the post office. If the postman doesn't beat them there and they get to the post office first, they get turned away. They can sometimes have to go to the post office a couple times. And we don't feel like hand delivery is a really good option because everything has to be sent to the property owner, which is not necessarily the person who answers the door, so that's difficult. We propose to change the way we do things and require that written notices be sent out 15 to 30 days before the public hearing. Since we're already sending stuff out to the newspaper, things should be ready. We're also proposing to eliminate the requirement for certified return receipt and just do United States Postal Service first-class mail with delivery confirmation so we can make sure it got there, and eliminate personal delivery as an option because it doesn't tend to work well. In terms of signage, Shorewood doesn't require a sign, nor does the state of Illinois, but we think that sometimes a sign makes a lot of sense. If somebody can see a property but isn't necessarily within 150 feet of the property, they could be impacted by something done to their property. So what we're proposing to do is kind of like a halfway point, where we don't put up a big complicated sign that costs the applicants hundreds of dollars, but where we have them put up a simple sign. Potentially the village could even make these signs and lend them out, just advertising that there's a public hearing, giving a phone number and a website so they can go and check out information on the public hearing. And we would also require it up 15 days before the public hearing and taken down 10 days before the public hearing. So that's, these are the red line changes, but basically things that I summarized. And the last item, the fourth item, is really a cleanup. We realized that we had freight terminals listed in both the permitted use section and the conditional use section in the I-2 zoning district. Should only be in one, so what we're proposing is that we make it just a conditional use. There would be a couple businesses that might become non-conforming, and we'll make sure we keep a record of that. But we think it'll just be cleaner, and a freight terminal can be a pretty intense use, so we think it makes more sense to have it as a conditional use than as a permitted use, because then they need a public hearing. And that concludes my presentation.
Will the signage be additional work for building or for public works?
I think we can lend out the sign and have the residents put it up.
Oh,
I'll disagree. I think that should be done by Public Works.
Public Works?
Sorry.
Then Public Works.
I hate to put more on PW, but I'd rather at least know that if we're gonna issue a public hearing notice, I'd rather at least know that if it was given to our staff, it went up. And not,
Going on private property, though, that's.
can we just put it right on the edge? I mean, there's a lot of neighboring municipalities that put it right on that edge of the easement.
Yeah. Generally goes on the private side, though, but.
Right, I mean, I just seen a lot of it just seem to pop right on that border. At least they could drive 2 stakes in the ground and, I guess how complicated of a sign would you be trying to propose?
We'd be talking about probably a coroplast sign, so a corrugated plastic sign, probably about 4 feet wide.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be similar, I'm sure we've seen some of the county ones that just have like a replaceable, they would just add whatever the public hearing date is and what the location is, but those seem to be drove in the ground with like T-post and zip ties to the post is what they appear to be.
And what we're proposing is really something very simple, maybe not even putting the date on it and just giving people the access to the website. That way it's not causing any extra cost, but people can still be a little bit more informed than they are today.
Yeah, they talked about a QR code that you could go by and scan to.
Yeah, and if a QR code's on there and that can be an updated link to our side, you know, that would streamline even having to update. I think would just be a matter of probably only, what, 2-3 signs is all we'd probably need?
Right. So right now, we don't have the idea of us making the signs in the ordinance. We just have the requirement for the sign in the ordinance. But we can certainly figure out those details about how we can make the signs, how they can be installed, and probably whether they're on private property or not. even if the ordinance were passed as proposed today.
When does this go into effect?
It would go into effect probably upon passing, is that correct?
Well, 10 days after it's published, so 10 days from tomorrow, unless you could change the date to make it a different date.
I'm just thinking, like, I don't know if there's a rush to pass it, waive the first read, but maybe work out those logistics just so there's a plan. That's why.
I don't have a problem with that.
Because I understand your concern, where my thought was if the resident doesn't follow through, then it messes up their own public hearing, but
Right.
that puts a lot on our schedule too.
Yeah, and like I said, I've just seen the way the county, and matter of fact, the city of Joliet, they had the big one for a while right there at 59 and Theodore. Just, and even that regard, they have to, if it's right on the property line, I think it's just as easy, we know it's up, and then we take our sign back down. But,
The detail of who puts the sign on and where it is not in this code, is that correct?
Correct.
Natalie? So we could pass it tonight and then figure out those details like you suggested?
Right.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Well, if you have a public hearing in 10 days and we don't have signs made, that becomes an issue, I think, right?
Right, so what we've done is, we did print out a test case and talked to Jim Partham, who would be working the signs, so we were gonna do a test for size and things like that. So, I'm not sure how long it takes Jim to make a sign, but we're hoping that they're fairly simple.
There's probably a lot more, in this motion than just the signs for,
without a doubt, there's more to this, yeah, so
there's a lot of stuff in there, and I'd rather have this, tabled and brought to the committee of the whole, where we can discuss some of these other things that are in there, like the games, board game things, and some of the other things with the employment agencies, to give a little more detail on it, other than just, hearing about it in the first read like this. I'm not ready to vote on this right now.
no, that's fine. Are you comfortable leaving it as a first read, or are you requesting to put a motion to table this?
I would like to table it and.
You have to make the motion to table.
The whole, because there's several different things that we have to discuss. Just the part that you're talking about the signs seems to bring up a lot of questions. And I've got a lot of questions about the board games.
Okay, then you'd have to make a motion to table, sir.
Does anyone?
Well, I think you probably have, rather than a motion to table, you'd have to make a motion to send it to the committee of the whole.
I'd like to make a motion to send, this, motion or this
Item number 3.
Item
number
three.
3 to the committee of the whole for further discussion, elaborating, where we can elaborate a little more on what all this entails and come up with a solution to bring it back to vote on.
I'll second.
Okay, so you have a motion by trustee Luciano.
Point
and
of
you have a-
order,
What's that, sir?
does that have to go back to planning, zoning, then after the committee?
No, I think that.
He just went further discussion. Planning and zoning's already approved it.
No, it wouldn't. I mean, unless there are drastic changes to it, I mean.
Which we could kick it back at.
You've had the public hearing on it, you can make changes. I mean, if you feel like the changes sort of overwhelm the text that was there at planning and zoning, then you may want to.
I have a question. Natalie, with this, a little bit of delay, does that impact anything?
No, I would say the only thing that is going to impact is, the next set of planning and zoning commission public hearings probably will fall under the older rules, not the newer rules, so they wouldn't have to post a sign or send out the notices earlier. So I think, the biggest impact of that is, we're probably looking to bring the town center, to project forward, so they just be under older rules, and we would ask them to send notices sooner than later.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion by trustee Luciano, a second by trustee Carroll to send item 3 to the committee of the whole. With that, we'll take a roll call to move item 3 to committee of the whole.
Selfridge,
Yes.
Amos,
Yes.
Brockman,
No.
Carroll,
Yes.
and Luciano.
Yes.
All right, so item 3 will be moved to the committee of the whole agenda for further discussion. All right, moving forward, item number 4 will be a discussion of a concept plan for the Shorewood Veterinary Clinic. This also is over to trustee Brockman.
Thank you again, Mayor. At our last planning and zoning, we had a real nice conversation about proposed building here in the town center and veterinarian clinic. Building looked good. Natalie showed us the different colors that they were proposing. So anything else, Natalie? I'm sure you want to give us some highlights, please.
So there's a local business that's interested in moving to the Shorewood Town Center. The business is primarily a medical and surgery center, primarily for dogs and cats. I think they said like 99% of their traffic is dogs and cats, so they do serve larger animals occasionally as well. They also have accessory uses such as an animal daycare and indoor overnight boarding. The property is located at the northwest corner of Jefferson Street and Whinstone. It's a 9-acre property, and about 3 acres will be used for the development of this. Currently, the property is owned by Granite. There's the Granite property. North of that, there's property owned by the library, and then the Town Center Pond, followed by the Town Center Park and Village Hall. They're proposing to go to the western side of the property. So here is just an overview of the site plan. As you see, the vet clinic will go all the way west. They'll have 2 access points to the site, and this is really conceptual at this point, so not all the details have been worked out, but 1 access point onto Jefferson Street, which is a good 1,000 feet away from Whinstone, and then an access point off of Whinstone as well. And then they'll have a road that runs along the back of the lots to the vet clinic, and ultimately those properties will be developed. All of the detention will flow to the north to the Town Center Detention Pond, which was designed to accommodate this lot. And then here's just an overview of what the site looks like. There are utilities right at the site. This is showing how it's going to connect to the sanitary sewer off of Jefferson Street. It'll also connect to the water off of Jefferson Street, and the storm water will flow to the north to the existing pond. It is a 2.3-acre site. When you look at just the area, not including the road and the access, it's about a 2.3-acre site, leaves about 6.7 acres developable for retail uses. They're proposing a 10,000 square foot building highlighted in blue. I'm also going to show you the outdoor yard that will be used by mostly dogs who are either in daycare or boarding. That's about 3,000 square feet. Highlighted in green, you have parking spaces. I believe there are 62 parking spaces. Like I mentioned, it's about 99% dogs, but they do have the ability to take an occasional horse in for medical care. So the yellow area actually kind of shows the more utilitarian areas. So you'll be able to back up a horse trailer there to unload a horse. It's got the utility equipment and the dumpster enclosure as well. They have located the dumpster enclosure so that it's at least 100 feet from the path, and they've located the dog run area so that it's at least 25 feet from the path. Let's see. This is their vision for the building. Mr. Steriati, if you want to hold up the color, you can see it's sort of a rusty brown color, kind of a neutral color. That'll be the main siding of the building. It's a board and batten and shiplap type of hardy board that they're going to use, sort of a farmhouse design. Their entryway protrudes a little bit. They've got rough sawn truss and columns with accent stones kind of to highlight the entryway. And then at the rear of the building, they're going to have their pet run area that will be in like a dark gray oak type color. The lighter colors on the building are their second-story storage areas, but most of their primary uses will be on the ground floor. Just to go over a little bit of the details, obviously their primary business is really the veterinary side of it, but I know at the Plan Commission more questions came up about the doggy daycare and the boarding, so I'll go into that a little bit. So their daycare is staffed between 7:30 and 6 p.m. They don't take dogs out the first half hour or the last half hour. And that's Monday through Friday. It actually ends a little bit earlier on Saturday, so it's 7:30 till noon on Saturday, and it's closed on Sunday and holidays. So basically, no dogs will be outside before 8 a.m. No dogs will be outside past 5:30 on the weekdays or 11:30 on Saturdays. Their doggy daycare will have a maximum of 20 dogs a day. There are 5 to 8 dogs per daycare group, so that would be the maximum that would go outside at a time. They'll have one staff member per 3 dogs when they're outside and a maximum of 8 dogs. If, we ask them if there's a dog who's loud and excited or nervous or barking at a squirrel like crazy or something like that, what do? They bring that dog inside. They're doing what they can to keep it quieter. In terms of the pet boarding, they have 8 runs. They're not indoor-outdoor runs. The dogs will be, if it's after doggy daycare hours, the dogs will be brought out individually by a staff member sort of for a walk around the yard. It's staffed till 10 p.m. The last time the dogs go out are at 8 p.m. So at 8 p.m. they bring the dogs out individually on a leash with a staff member. Then they come in, they have their quiet time with the dogs, and then I guess at 10 o'clock they all go to sleep. And there are kind of fancy doggy suites where they all have, their own individual ones where they may share it with a sibling dog, and their own little bed, and even some of them have TVs. In terms of setbacks, the closest residence, or the closest property line is 550 feet, which puts us at about, probably about 580 feet between the building and the nearest home. To the north, it's 775 feet to the property line on the south for the condos at Walnut Trails, and then it's about 1,100 feet from the Hamptons. Just as a comparison, I'll pop up the map showing the Animal Care Center of Shorewood. So they're about 180 feet to the closest property line, or 215 feet to the nearest mobile home, and then 675 feet on the south and 720 feet on the north. So they're pretty similar setbacks, except once you get across 59, that's actually quite a bit closer. I have not personally heard any complaints about Animal Care Center, and from what I understand, where these people are, there are neighbors, and they don't get complaints either. Everything is drywalled, so it does help with sound. And limiting the number of dogs outside should help. The applicants did provide some information. They explained how so this is from the applicants, they explained how they positioned the fence in the yards at the southwest corner for the safety of their animals, but because it's pretty far from the nearest resident. They say the nearest resident is about 260 yards, and the average hearing distance of a person is about at 130 decibels, which is louder than a dog bark, is 100 meters. So by that analysis, you really shouldn't hear many dogs bark at all. Dog bark is on average 60 to 80 decibels. They're also planning some landscaping, which isn't shown at this concept plan level, but to help mitigate the sound, we're recommending that they use things like arborvitae and trees and landscaping that is known to sort of absorb sound. So the applicants are in the audience to hear your comments or any questions that you have. We'll do our best to answer.
Real quick, you guys referenced on that project, you're referring to, it's a 9-acre parcel. Are you guys purchasing the entire development? Or are you guys getting an easement? Or how are you constructing the road? I know it says on there that there's a residual retail space, but is that you guys, or is that, again, creating the access road on the north end there?
Yes, so my name is Jeff Kilberg. I'm with Apex Design Build. Mayor, to answer your question, so that is obviously planned into the 3.11 acres, so it's actually part of the entire subdivided lot. So we'll divide off the 3.11 acres, so there's no easement needed in that situation, and then the remaining property would be below to the south of that.
Is that something that you guys are going to develop yourself? Is that kind of what I'm getting at? So that's a future development that you guys intend on doing as well?
There's intention for the future to do development there.
Okay, so I think that's good to know that you guys are acquiring the entire 9, developing on the west end, and you have intentions of finishing up the development over the other 6.5 acres that remain.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
And the reason, just to clarify, the reason that road is placed as far north as it is to allow for easier development in the future. Because of that placement, you don't have to go through and rip it up for future development. So it's strategically put to the north side of that property.
I like the location. I think it's an appropriate location to put it. I think especially going to the west end, I think it creates that little buffer, also provides additional retail, as you guys were referenced in your plan that was proposed here this evening, allowing it to get, there's another 6.5 acres of potential development there, so you could easily stick another 2 or 3 different developments within that parcel. I know the coloring of the building is a little bit more of an identity. I don't know that they're out there because it's a local company. They're not trying to impact their existing business. So I understand that. Knowing that, I think it's good. I like the identity. It's a character aspect that they're carrying forward, kind of as we would do with any big box. We wouldn't push too much on some of that, so I'm appreciative of that. Are you guys really putting TVs in dog suites, though?
There's definitely.
You did say that.
There's TVs in dog suites, yes.
I mean, it's pretty wild, but I like it. You know, I know planning and zoning kind of talked a little bit about some of the color was at one point was a reference. You know, the village hall is a red building.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a farmhouse.
Pardon?
It's not a farmhouse.
It's not a farmhouse, but it is done aesthetically. It's clean. So
The images there are much more red than the
Sam,
color
sorry.
that's provided tonight. So
Yeah.
planning and zoning did not have the privilege of seeing that. So I think that is different.
Yeah, I know it's a concept plan, but how do you picture having the name of the business on that building?
Yeah, so right now it's not shown, but the gable that is above the main entry is the envisioned spot for signage on the building. Provides nice adequate spacing. You know, it could be obviously per code, but yeah, that's the best location for signage. It was specifically designed with that in mind.
And then you'll have another one out front then as well?
Like a monument sign or something like that, yeah.
Natalie, on the original concept, are they just pursuing, otherwise, they would have an entrance off of Whinstone. Are they pursuing like a right-in, right-out on 52?
They're
Or
talking
no?
to IDOT.
Okay.
It's shown as a full access, but really, it's just a concept plan. They haven't
Sure.
gotten very far with IDOT to know what IDOT's gonna allow.
Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, correct. So right now we're proposing the IDOT to have a full access. So right in, left turn out, cross traffic, etc. That's the most, we'll say, efficient for the site. You can obviously turn into the site. There's maneuverability within the site for large, vehicles, large animal trailers, fire engines, etc. But in terms of being able to fully access the site from both east and west, that provides the most accessibility. Our understanding from IDOT is that based on current traffic volume, there's no traffic control signal obviously required at this intersection. And then obviously we all know there's one going in at Whinstone here in the very near future. But as Natalie said, this has been proposed to IDOT. This is a concept. There will be further permitting that we go through. At least in the background, there would be accessibility from Whinstone. So if you're thinking about construction traffic and construction entrances, Whinstone can provide that in the meantime while going through the IDOT process, because everybody knows that IDOT's not typically fast.
No, that does take a little bit of time. If IDOT denies a full access, that doesn't completely inhibit your project, though, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So you
It's just an inconvenience on IDOT's.
You could
if
trim
that
it
were the
down
case.
to a right in, right out in
Okay.
that scenario, so you maintain your, we'll say, one-way access points. And if they're, up to that, that's fine.
Okay.
That's not going to inhibit. But it's better to ask for the higher end ask,
Sure.
we'll say, rather than just go to the right in, right out.
I understand. I mean, I like the idea. It's nice to see some different development come in there. I like the fact that they're looking to especially develop the other 6.5 acres in there as well. So definitely nice to see some different movement in there. They're obviously aware of the traffic signal going in at 52 and Whinstone, which will obviously help them as well, along with some of the other stuff going on in here.
How does because I looked back at the town center plan from 2018.
Oh boy,
So,
trying to think here.
like, I guess a couple things, and maybe the library lot skews it anyway, but it was mostly intended to be residential around the pond, and there wasn't a road this close to 52. So my concern, and maybe it's just gonna have to happen anyway with the way this is laid out, but you're gonna pull into Whinstone and have to take a quick left here, and eventually maybe take another quick right. Then you go a little bit farther, you got the turn into the library parking lot, which is the original one. Then you've got the turnaround, that's gonna be the Hamptons. Is Winston gonna be just a mess?
Yeah.
And maybe it's a little bit more than this, and it's not related to your project, but somewhat is, right? Like as far as planning for this density that we're building here?
I think that the access will certainly be able to handle a vet clinic, but if you had a supermarket or something like that, it might have, a little bit of trouble. It's hard because you have that whole lot between this property and the pond.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes access pretty difficult. I'm not concerned about a vet clinic traffic being problematic. A restaurant or something like that would work, some retail would work. A really heavy duty user might trigger some extra traffic improvements though.
That makes sense, Natalie, thank you. When would you like to build it?
Yesterday.
All right, looks like a good project.
The realistic goal is if weather permits, it'd be great to get like a footing and foundation started before springtime. If weather doesn't permit, then more traditional timetable, springtime, groundbreaking.
What other types of businesses are you thinking about to fill up the rest of the acreage there?
There's no current concept exactly, but envisioning some sort of retail in the near future. Yeah.
I'm just thinking a restaurant may not work if they got dogs barking, but.
It would have to be complimentary for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's not like.
You could do a pet-friendly restaurant.
Yeah.
And the dogs really are going to be enclosed to that 3,000 square foot area. So that, other than the dogs walking in, like mine who keeps trying to escape whenever you take it to a vet clinic, they're really only going to be in that 3,000 square foot area behind the building.
Are they subject to the dog barking ordinances in village? So if I know we're talking about the sound and they're 25 feet from, I think, the walking path. So if if it becomes a disturbance to neighbors, then what? Is it allowed because they're a permitted business, or can you would residents be able to call the police and they would be, I guess, ticketed for the animal noise?
I mean, the current ordinance.
I would think so, and I would think we would,
It's
we
very
would write
vague.
things into the PUD that sort of mandates, what they have to do if there's a loud barking dog and taking them inside and things like that. We can certainly write criteria like that in there to avoid even having to get to that place.
Because I think the slide still said no animals outside after 5 o'clock, but I don't think that's true.
No unaccompanied animals. So if there's an animal outside, I think it's 5:30. So if there's a dog outside after 5:30, it will be on a leash by itself, which is one person in the yard. There won't be multiple animals at the same time. So they will take the animal, the dogs out for an afternoon stroll or an evening stroll around the yard, and then bring them in at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, there's no free animals roaming in that yard at any time without attendance. So as it was highlighted, and I think Natalie took an excerpt out of it, but above that, there's basically one attendant per 2 to 3 dogs is how the breakdown works.
Okay. Yeah, I think the planning zone and the color was the objection. I think there was some hesitation on a red barn-like structure.
Yeah, and I remember them talking about they didn't have the
Yeah,
the PDF or the image didn't quite portray exactly. So.
I think a white or a gray would look better and fit the town center, but I understand because the Hamptons are going to be there. I know that it's a branding thing. I don't know. It's a good business. I worry about the dog noise, but I just don't know. I've never heard it at the other animals. I know they brought it up at Jewel, but I've never heard it, but I don't go that far in Jewel.
I mean, you can hear it at Jewel, but you're in and out of your car, so it really doesn't faze you much,
But Jewel has the indoor-outdoor dog runs, and they leave dogs out there for extended periods sometimes from grooming or other things. This is not the same kind of business operation.
Yeah. I was going to say ACC Shorewood usually stacks their animals together, so you're getting probably maximum volume off of that. Rather, this is a much more controlled environment.
Talking about TVs and suites for a dog to go to bed. I mean,
It's
The
pretty good.
entrance on 52, you definitely are getting an entrance to come in on 52. The question is whether it's going to be east and west.
Mm-hmm.
You've definitely got an approval from IDOT for access from 52.
Not yet.
Not yet.
that's
So,
they're applying to IDOT for an access.
So
Yep.
if you don't get the access to 50 from 52, is the project a no project?
so the happy medium is obviously right in, right out. That's the happy medium with IDOT. If IDOT is not happy with that, then Windstone will be the primary access point.
So then if Windstone becomes your primary entrance, and you're going to develop another 6 acres, how many businesses would you think you would put on 6 acres? 1, 2?
Really
3?
dependent of the type of business that comes in. It's really hard to say because every business has a distinct square footage requirement that they're gonna need, capacity for parking, et cetera. So you could potentially say there's 3-4 spots based on my assessment,
Let me ask you-
looking at it right
let me
now,
ask you a
but it's hard to
different
say.
way. As far as the amount of traffic, cars coming in
Mhm.
on a 6,000 square foot development, how many automobiles would you think would come into the extra space?
That really can't be answered unless you know the
You don't know
exact
what the, you
usage.
don't know what the use is. That really is hard. I mean, if it's a library or something, or a book club of some sort that builds something, it's gonna have minimal, but like Natalie referenced, if it's a big box user or something, that completely changes the traffic flow. So it's
Well,
really,
that's what I'm trying to
but
find
it-
out.
Fast food restaurants,
they
have
That's
more
Scott's
volume.
question.
but they don't have, it's merely speculation right
So-
now. We,
so if
we
you-
don't know what may go in the next 6.5 acres.
If you
So
have,
then it's a crapshoot on what we're gonna have traffic problem with, is what we're basically saying.
Potentially at some point, but again, as Natalie referenced, if it becomes a big box user or a high demand user, then there could be other mandated improvements on Windstone to accommodate that. But as of right now, you don't have that demand.
Okay, the next question, and then this is, I guess, to Steve, or Scott, has any residents from Town Center had anyone made a comment about it, or are they aware of what's going there?
It wasn't a public hearing.
It's a concept plan that went to planning and zoning.
So I think
It's a concept.
if it's a PUD approval, it would require a public hearing.
Correct.
and then they would drive down the street and see the sign.
And then one last question, as far as, you're looking at proximities to houses and things like that. We have events up here at the village. We use that parking lot from the library. How far would the building be from where they park for the events?
Is that parking lot for the library,
That's the gravel
ground
pad
up
that's out there.
asphalt? Yeah, I'm gonna guess, just take a stab at it. From the very western extent of that parking lot, you're probably talking about 600 feet.
So it's from where they, even the extended part, the building, the vet building would be 600 feet from there.
That's a total guess.
And so with the traffic of cars going out there would not cause a disturbance where there'd be more noise caused from the animals in there because of
No,
less traffic there.
if you have cars going in and out of there, that's gonna drown out any type of noise that's coming off the animal side. To be honest, your traffic noise is far louder and more consistent than any animal barking is. And with the established parameters that they put in place from a practice standpoint and how they operate and how they have attendance at all times with the animals, the noise will be seriously negligible. It came up during planning and zoning.
Well, I meant more in the fact that it would cause the dogs to bark and cause
Nah.
noise.
With-
Well,
with-
as long as it doesn't bother the residents, it's my main concern.
Yeah, no, I don't foresee any issue like that.
With the exception of summer camp, we don't have very many events that happen before 5:30 during the week or before noon on Saturday. So we really probably won't have too much conflict with special events.
So you're saying that once you're not having the dogs out, it's buffered enough where the dogs would not be disturbed by any traffic around?
Correct. So currently in the existing practice that they have traffic that goes by. There's no disturbance. And if you're outside, you can't hear any dogs outside. So, and that's if you're standing remotely close to that building.
Yeah, well, I was concerned about with traffic being there, if it would cause a disturbance
Yeah.
inside where it would cause a noise problem.
No, I would not worry about that whatsoever.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions, thoughts, comments, concerns?
I don't know if Scott, if you'll concur, but I thought planning and zoning recepted it pretty well.
Yeah, I think more of the questions, I think, were on the color palette.
Yeah.
They talked about hearing dogs at the Jewel one. Those were my notes from it. Other than that, I think there's no other real questions.
All right, keep it going.
All right. Do you guys want me to leave that, or can I take the samples home? Yeah.
Yeah, unless somebody specifically wants to try to look at it at the break, look at the color aspects.
It's up to you guys.
It's all yours.
I can always pick them up.
They said, build it, get it going. All right, moving on. Item number 5, discussion of an updated concept plan for Auburn Chase, which was formerly the Waterstone development. Trustee Brockman.
Thank you, Mayor. Natalie, you gave us a pretty good description on what's going to happen there, so you want to continue with that, please?
Sure. So back in August, Laura came before you with a plan for Waterstone. Since that time, they've had a chance to do a deep dive. They've renamed it, so it's now going to be called Auburn Chase, which is good because I can stop calling it Windstone by mistake. They've also realized that they don't think that their townhomes are as good of a product for Shorewood as their single family. So they've redone their site plan to eliminate the 124 conventional townhomes. In doing so, they added 10 of the small lot single families, so that brought the total to 144. And they added 48 of the larger lot single family homes, which bring the total to 133 of those. So it's about an even split with the two different size single family homes, no townhomes. They've also tweaked their site plan. They just got word from the school district, from Minnesota Grade School District, that they like the site plan, the accesses should work for them. So that's good. So basically they'll come in, there'll be 2 accesses to the school property. They've kind of reorganized some of the things. There'll now be 2 ponds. The southern pond is a large 15-acre pond. They're planning to do a whole pathway system around that pond, and then at the corner of that street, they'll have a park that's geared for school-age children. If you go further down the street towards the south end of the subdivision, they'll have a tot lot, so geared more towards toddlers and preschoolers. And then at the north part of the subdivision with the smaller pond, they will have a little dog park, which will be for the residents only. So it'll probably be controlled with a key fob, but the other 2 will be public parks. This is basically it. I didn't want you to be surprised when they came forward for their preliminary approvals because the site plan had changed, but I'm happy to bring back any comments you have to them if there's anything you think they need to change or update, or if you had any comments on the switch from the townhouses to the single family.
L'Oreal, I'm catching you off guard here, but does all that water go through Westminster Gardens then? Would you think?
Well, they have not designed all of the stormwater per se. Now, they've looked at conceptually, but it is gonna be heading in that direction. So they'll have the stormwater.
There's a pretty big easement there in Westminster Gardens for water to go through.
Right, but the release rates of what they will design will match what is post or pre-construction.
Okay. And number 2, once that water main gets past the homes, does that come east then at that point? Or does that go straight north all the way to Sile?
One more time, what was your question?
The water main we're gonna put in, that goes along the western portion of this subdivision.
So it's gonna go all the way up through the western portion of that property, also the school property itself.
Oh, it
It'll be
will go
on-
past the back of the school too?
Correct.
Okay, 'cause
Then it'll head toward Sile, stay on the south side of Sile, and head toward, easterly toward the railroad tracks and ComEd easement.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, what was the total home sites that this becomes then? Since they're gonna make it all single family then?
277.
So 277 single family homes?
So it's just a hair lower than 50% of what was originally approved.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions on that?
No. All right, thanks. Item 6 will be consideration for approval of an ordinance abating the taxes hereto levied for the year 2024 to pay the principal of and interest of the $14,200,000 general obligation bond series 2021 for the village of Shorewood, Will County, Illinois. This item is also up for a first read. The $14 million would be the remaining public works bonds. And obviously we had Odell home sick. She kind of went over some of it with Aaron, so he can kind of fill in some of the blanks, I believe, for if there's any questions.
Okay. So good evening. Every year when we do the tax levy stuff, this comes up. It's a housekeeping issue to continue abating the tax. So there are two different tax abatements out there. One's on the Public Works property. The other one is on the $8.5 million we just did for the utilities project along Earl and Geneva roads. So these are up for first read. If we want to continue to abate the taxes as we have done, then we would put this into practice and vote on it and inform the county, just like we do, that we're gonna abate these taxes. The first one up is for the remaining on the Public Works property, and the second one is for the one we just did on Earl Road. So if you guys wanna continue to think about it, they are up for first read. If you guys wanna vote on them, we can call them individually.
And one of the questions, came up somewhere along the way, if we opted to not abate the taxes and roll this into a property tax bill, it's about a 73% increase on property tax, is what it would equate to.
73?
To do both of them.
If you
correct.
did both of them, if you wanted to not
What did
abate,
you say, seven?
pardon?
73%?
73% increase on the property tax bill. 73%.
If you don't continue to abate
Correct.
both of them, it could be on a $300,000 house, it goes up about 73% is what Ann calculated.
So your recommendation is to?
The guidance we've had all along is and from the onset of these projects was we were gonna abate these taxes. So staff has been given no direction to consider an alteration of that plan as it was prepared, you see. You know, and that, this was also part of our discussions back in the October finance meeting that we.
Yeah, that's always obviously a discussion point as to what would that, what would that change to somebody, but yeah, just for reference, it does happen.
So we don't want to do that.
You're correct. No,
I
it
would
makes,
say no at this
I think
time.
it makes sense to continue abating.
I think if we end up doing something later on down the road, if we have to have a discussion regarding a police station or something in a few years, there may be a better opportunity to factor that into it or something of that nature later on, but
Does anyone feel like we need to wait for a second read?
if not, I mean, yeah, we can waive
Let's do
that,
it
we can
now.
waive it and move forward.
Can I read them both together, Dave?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll make a motion for the consideration of the approval of an ordinance abating the taxes hereto levied for the year 2024 to pay the principal of and interest on the 14,200,000 general obligation bonds, Series 2021 of the Village of Shorewood, Will County, Illinois, and waive the second read. And also, I make a motion for the approval of an ordinance abating the taxes hereto levied for the year 2024 to pay the principal of and the interest on general obligation bonds, Series 2024 of the Village of Shorewood, Will County, Illinois, and waive the second read on that one as well.
All right, so items 6 and 7 have been motioned by trustee Selfridge.
Second.
Seconded trustee Carroll. Roll call, please.
Amos.
Yes.
Brockman.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Luciano.
Yes.
And Selfridge.
Yes.
All right, and clarifying with everybody that applied for 6 and 7. All right, business item number 8, consideration for approval of an ordinance for the levy and collection of taxes for the Village of Shorewood, Will County, Illinois, for the fiscal year beginning April 1, 2024, and ending March 31st, 2025. This is the aspect that we talked about back at the last committee of the whole. We will not make any adjustments to the rate. We will hold our rate, so there will be no increase on our property tax rate for our residents.
So I have to read a couple things.
Yeah, let Aaron read off a couple things. This item does have to remain as a first read, though.
Correct. We will have a public hearing, because there's a date requirement. We can't even do it in 2 weeks at the next meeting. We have to do it December 10th. That will be the night of the public hearing, and then the second consideration and presumably your vote on that night. This is the discussion following the committee of the whole, or this was discussed at the committee of the whole on October 8th, and we discussed holding the rate. That was the guidance given by the board to staff, that we wanted to hold the rate. EAV is going up, of course, so we wanted to garner a few more dollars with which to operate. But the amount that Ann is proposing to levy is $2,190,188.75. That's the proposed rate, that's the proposed levy amount. And then, as Ann informed you at the time, the county will then give us the rate. If we don't like the rate, we can adjust it ever so slightly up or down to hit that target that you guys had directed staff to do, to hold the rate at that time. And, again, that will be a hearing on this, public hearing on December 10th. And I think that's everything I was required to say in public hearing for this matter today.
Anybody have any questions for Aaron? All right, so business item number 8 needs to remain as a first read. So with that, we'll move on to business item number 9, will be consideration for approval of a bid award to Schwartz Construction Group for the 2025 Rivers Edge Park Phase B project in the amount of $926,706, and authorize execution of the contract consistent with the bid documents, Public Works.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is for the next phase of our Rivers Edge Park project. Phase A is right now is in construction. This is our Phase B. So Phase B includes a challenge course, shelters, pollinated garden, a tree bosque, and more of the trail system of this park. So we'll be utilizing more of the land itself. We have a budget of approximately $1.2 million. Reminder, we do have $600,000 from an OSLAG grant for this project. Due to a tight budget and our wishes to maximize our budget and the amount of amenities that we're able to get for the project and use of the OSLAG grant, we had a number of alternate bids included with the base bid of this project. One was adding a second shelter, so if the bids come in fairly well, we have an opportunity for a second shelter, an upgraded park identity sign, and additional plantings throughout the entire park. So 4 bids were received with Schwartz Construction Group, including all the alternate bids, with a bid of $926,706. We anticipate construction in early 2025 with completion in the fall of 2025. If approved, this will be committed in our next budget and cannot be removed. Staff is recommending the village board accept the bid proposal and award the contract to Schwartz Construction Group for the Rivers Edge Park Phase B project in the amount of $926,706 and authorize execution of the contract consistent with the bid documents. Any questions?
I've got one question, it's related to the next two, because the OSLAG grant's 600,000, we have to spend 1.2 to get the full 600 from the state?
No, we
It's
spent
a 50-50
600
match. We have to-
To make 1 point.
Okay,
It's a 50-50 grant.
Right.
and we have to spend it this year or approve it this year?
Not this year, we just have to, there's a time limit, I believe it's end of 2026.
So we have time to take advantage of the remainder. I just did the quick math of these two, and we're leaving some money on the table, so we can, like, try to
We
capture
can't-
more?
We like to try to maximize, but we can't just, we're gonna do another slide. or
Okay,
something
so
like
there's
that.
not pieces.
There are
of-
restrictions.
Okay.
So the bid is covering everything we have. There may be some extras if we hit some unforeseen issues that might be included as part of it. But what we don't wanna also do is go too much over either. We have a tight budget next year,
Okay,
okay? But we wanna try to maximize our 600,000 to get 600,000 of the OSLAG grant.
okay. No, I think that makes sense.
Is there a lighting plan for over there by the,
Not included as part of these phases yet.
but there is one?
Not included in any of the phases that I'm aware of at this moment.
I don't know if there is a lighting plan that was ever
Parking
designed,
is
or
dusk.
Designed to be low impact and.
we haven't gotten into it yet.
Parking lot area.
Yeah, if you recall, there was extensive conversations about not having it be a busy park. And we had the busiest amenities that we're including on the west end, and then walking trails without light throughout the rest of the park. We didn't want to disturb the neighbors on either the north or the south. That was the original plan, to be as nature-esque and that sort of thing as possible.
I think there was a couple discussions about some different bollard lights in like the parking lot area or something.
In the parking area.
Yeah, I mean, nothing overly intrusive though. But yes, when we did
King
the,
Crest has lighting there.
But it's always had lighting. This was new, and that was a request by all the residents, and that maintained
I
through
mean,
the
they're not very bright, but I mean, at least you can see somebody if they're vandalizing things.
right.
Well, it's 32 acres, I mean,
We still got room and some opportunities to
I mean,
still
we could
pop
put
in.
something in down the road and do solar bollards down the road, but right now, that's not part of the plan.
Okay, just a thought.
Anybody have any questions on that for Noriel on item 9?
Motion approved as read.
Motion trustee Amos, second trustee Selfridge, roll call please.
Brockman,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Luciano.
Yes.
Selfridge.
Yes.
And Amos.
Yes.
All right, item number 9 has been approved. Item 10 will be consideration for approval of the purchase of park equipment in the amount of $92,957.45 from Compman Incorporated for the Rivers Edge Park Phase B project. Noriel?
Thank you again, Mayor. So we now just awarded the contract. Now we also have to buy the challenge course equipment. So similar to many of our other park projects, we like to keep this out of the contract with the contractor and utilize our government pricing, and we buy it ahead of time, which will allow us to use the government pricing and then, of course, get delivery of such by the time that the construction starts. Equipment concepts were shown to the public. We had an online survey. The public had picked the concept that they had liked. We proceeded with such. So our fiscal year 2026 budget for this is also $1.2 million, again with a $600,000 OSLAG grant. If approved, this item will be committed in our next budget and cannot be removed. Staff is recommending the village board approve the proposal and purchase from Compan in the amount of $92,957.45. Any questions?
Any questions for Noriel on that one?
I'll make a motion for the approval of the purchase of park equipment in the amount of $92,957.45 from Compman Inc. for the Rivers Edge Park Phase B project.
Motion Selfridge,
Second.
second Luciano. Roll call, please.
Carol,
Yes.
Luciano.
Yes.
Selfridge.
Yes.
Amos.
Yes.
And Brockman.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, 10's approved. Item 11, be consideration for approval of an ordinance directing and authorizing disposal of surplus property by the Village of Shorewood Public Works. Noriel?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. So we have a couple of vehicles to declare as surplus. As you're aware, we just purchased a new flatbed pickup truck. Thank you very much. So we are requesting that the old 2006 flatbed that we have in our fleet be declared as surplus. Just in time too, the transmission went out on it. So we will be auctioning it off following all the state statutes. We are also, with a little bit of a twist here, recommending a 2008 International plow truck. This is the plow truck that we are going to replace with the chassis that we just had purchased. Unfortunately, we were supposed to make this one the backup truck and then auction off the other backup truck that we currently have. However, our mechanics were chasing a leak that they had found, and it has a cracked engine head. So rather than this becoming the backup, we are now auctioning it off. Upon being declared surplus, the vehicles will be removed from our property inventory and auctioned. Staff is recommending the village board approve the ordinance disposing of the surplus property and waive the second read.
Anybody have any questions about keeping or getting rid of a couple vehicles?
I'll make a motion for the approval of an ordinance for directing and authorizing the disposal of surplus property by the Village of Shorewood and waive the second read.
Second.
Motion Selfridge, second Amos. Roll the call, please.
Luciano.
Yes.
Selfridge.
Yes.
Amos.
Yes.
Brockman.
Yes.
And Carol.
Yes.
All right, business item number 12 will be consideration for approval of the purchase of 3 printers in the amount of $14,487.48 for Konica Minolta and enter into a service agreement at the described rate for a period of 60 months. Mr. McCluskey.
Good evening. Yes, we're looking to replace 3 printers. These are located at the police station records office, the community development portion of this building, and then one in the finance portion of this building. Our current printers for these locations have about 600,000 prints on them. They are nearing the end of their useful life, such that the hardware to repair them will no longer be carried by our vendor that supplies them. So we did request proposals from 3 different companies. You can see those listed below from Gordon Flesh, Arc Imaging, and Konica Minolta. We do have $14,500 budgeted for this. Konica Minolta did that. This also includes service for these printers, so if there's ever toner needed, a replacement part, they cover that for a period of 6 months included in this pricing. So I am recommending that we approve the purchase of 3 printers via Konica Minolta for the sum of $14,487.48 and enter into the service agreement with them for 60 months.
Anybody have any questions for Bill?
I'll make a motion for the approval of the purchase of 3 printers in the amount of $14,487.48 from Conica Minolta and enter into a service agreement at the described rate for a period of 60 months.
Second.
Motion Selfridge, second Carroll. Roll call, please.
Selfridge.
Yes.
Amos.
Yes.
Brockman.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
And Luciano.
Yes. Thank you. With that, we'll move into department reports. Building. Thank you. Community development.
No report, thank you.
Thank you. Finance is not here. And Parks is coming up.
Good evening. We will just keep it quick this evening to let everyone know that our winter newsletter is out and available online, as well as registration is open for our winter programs, so be sure to check that out. And then this Friday, our village Christmas tree will be harvested and transported to Town Center. We would like to thank the Appleby family for their donation, as well as Arbortech and Deconstruction for providing their services. Please join us at 5 p.m. on Friday, December 6th for our annual tree lighting ceremony. This ceremony kicks off our annual holiday market, which will take place December 6th, 7th, and 8th out here in Town Center Square. Thank you.
Thank you. Police, anything? Thank you. Public Works?
Thank you, Mayor. So Public Works is very busy with our leaf pickup program, so we're in week number 5. We're hitting the peak right now, so longer days, and we'll get through the town. Bear with us, a little bit of patience as we get through and finish up our program. And we are now with the Christmas tree coming in. You'll see Public Works staff in and around the town center area with installing a lot of lights for the holiday festivities.
How long do you anticipate the leaf pickup to go, Noriel?
Through December 1st, unless it snows.
Thank you.
Thank you. Administrator?
No report.
Thank you. Move into trustee comments. Trustee Amos.
No comment, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Trustee Brockman.
Thank you, Mayor. Other than the 5 agenda items on tonight's agenda, our next meeting will be December 4th. And when I went out to Public Works the other day, I had envisioned this for a long time, but there's a cubicle out there where we have compost from our leaves available for the consumer, for the public.
Resident?
And so those are 2022 leaves, and 2023 are on their way, and 2024 we're picking up now. But I envision that we make the full cycle there, and if we have the capability of getting a machine, we can make 2024 leaves look like that in about 4 or 5 months instead of 2 years. But I love to see it. And also there's a cubicle of mulch there too from all the wood chips that you've processed over the last year or two. So beautiful, beautiful setup. Love it. So looks great.
Good job, Noriel. Are residents taking advantage of that?
Yeah, they're having a few.
Yeah.
And I've been kindly sending pictures to Mr. Klima when they do.
I know there's a Facebook posting. Maybe we could do a couple more postings before it gets real cold. I don't know.
Work with Ms. Bohannon.
Yeah. Good job.
It'll be a hit in the spring.
Yeah.
With that, Trustee Carroll.
No comment.
No problem. Trustee Chapman is absent. Trustee Luciano.
Citizen Advisory Committee does not meet in November and December because of the holiday. Our next meeting will be January 23rd, 2025. As always, if anyone's interested in getting involved in it, you can contact myself or any of the members. Our information is on the village website. That's all I have.
Thank you. And Trustee Selfridge.
Thank you, Mayor. No comment.
All right, thank you. With that, I'm asking for a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel, consider employment, compensation, discipline, or performance, and dismissal of specific employees, and regarding land acquisition, sale, lease of real estate owned by the village.
So
Mayor,
moved.
could you add pending litigation to that also?
And to discuss pending litigation with said village.
So moved.
Motion, Trustee Amos.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Selfridge. Roll call to go into executive, please.
Amos.
Yes.
Brockman.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Luciano.
Yes.
And Selfridge.
Yes.
All right, we'll go to exec, and we, just for the record, we will adjourn from executive session to be no action taken after.